Just let them die in their fortified houses? Nah, dog. Let them die in their tiny little shacks. It's insane. You have all of these. I see in discourse. I retweeted it on Twitter, the Everything app. So many old people just sit on the properties that they pay far too low of property taxes for. They have like 4 bedrooms, but they only use 1. They're old and infirm. They can't use half the rooms, and they sit in it when a family should be occupying it. They're like, oh, I want to die in the home that I grew up in. No. That's a waste. You're old and dying. You should go live in, like, you should sell that property and then use the money to go, like, take care of your own well-being in a smaller property you can actually take advantage of. It'd be one thing if the property that you were sitting on was like an 800 square foot 1-bedroom house, but it's not. Old people should live with their families. Nobody wants to live with their fucking grandparents. Maybe you have like cool grandparents or whatever, but most are chuds. Also, they're not cool. Sometimes they are. I'd rather pay their property tax. People live in multi-generational houses here in Pakistan. Yeah, and we should be taking social pointers from Afghanistan. Why exactly? Sorry, not Afghanistan. Pakistan. Why? Look, it's a huge problem. You have tens of millions of large homes. Hey, they're right next to each other. You have tens of millions of huge homes being occupied by geriatric fucks who refuse to sell them because they're prideful. They just sit on them. They don't use them. And then all these areas dry up because the old people are too infirm and they don't have the money to take care of themselves or stimulate the local economy. It's senseless. I was out canvassing. It really drove home every single house owned by a boomer. Yeah, like the average first-time home buying age now is like, what, 45 or something? And the average general home buying age is like 65? It's crazy. Didn't you say society would be better if you encourage communal living spaces? Yeah, that doesn't mean like everyone in one house. It means like, you know, living arrangements where people have kind of like a village aspect to their local community. I mean, even Soviet blocs did this to an extent. You know, it's kind of variable. At any rate, it doesn't matter because we're not talking about multi-generational households. We're talking about old people alone in their gigantic houses, refusing to sell them because they're prideful, thereby not having enough money to take care of themselves. They don't even use the properties. And now we want to take away their property taxes? If you can't afford the property taxes, sell the property. Vaush wants people to be connected to their communal living spaces, but also wants people to have no connections to their households? That's a whole different sentence. Bitches say they like pancakes, so you hate waffles? That's a whole different sentence. We're starting off early with this one, huh? I'll need to see some data before I start blaming retired people on this instead of other aspects of our society for the housing situation. You need to see some data before you blame retired people for the housing situation? Bucko, have you looked at any of the data? That's like the easiest layup. Do you know? No, it's a huge problem. It's not like specifically the moral fault of every old person or whatever. That's not how systemic issues work. But like, yeah, on a broader structural level, we encourage like indefinite home ownership for old people, and then we depress the property taxes they're expected to pay, which means that you underfund local schools, which is even more of an incentive for young people. I mean, you're increasing the tax burden on young people. Old people should have a higher tax burden. They're old. They've had more time to accrue wealth. They're also less economically productive. Also, they're not going to live as long. What do they need that money for? If you can't afford the property tax, sell the house. Getting to pay property taxes is a privilege. It means you own a property. It's crap. I mean, like, I didn't choose the economy where like 90% of the net wealth of every American is locked up in their fucking mortgage, you know? Schools being funded by property taxes is dumb, to be fair. Yeah, it is, but it's also how it works, you know? I mean, if we could like restructure it from first principles, trust me, I'd have a lot of changes that I would want to make. But right now, it seems like the only fucking people who pay taxes are like young. They're yuppies. Yuppies are the only one They're the only ones who pay that. If you're a millionaire or whatever, you get your accountants to do tax loophole bullshit. You get paid $1 a year by your company. The rest of it's in like unrealized capital gains. If you're poor, you pay no taxes because the federal income taxes is very low on you, and you get a bunch of tax benefits for being poor. And then if you're old, you don't pay fucking property taxes. You don't pay income taxes because you don't have an income. Do you pay taxes, lol? I'm a yuppie. Yeah, I pay taxes. I pay the most taxes. I'm literally a self-employed, high income but not high enough to do corporate trickery individual. I pay a higher percentage in taxes than like anyone else in America. I'm the most tax burdened. I'm single. I'm self-employed. I have no corporate entity to hide behind. I'm out there paying for your lifestyle. You're enjoying your retirement on my dime, you goddamn neats. You're not old enough to be a yuppie? Yuppie stands for young urban professional. So if anything, the definition that's in contention here is whether I'm a professional. Maybe a professional at making a dang fool out of myself sometimes, you know. Anyway, the point is that property taxes should be 8 times higher. That's the point that I'm getting at. 8 times higher. You know, they're just about to cut property taxes in Florida. Florida's not even going to be a state soon. It's going to be like an unincorporated territory. They're not even going to have the baseline funding required to maintain their existence as a state. Yeah, the Florida Oblast. God. 1 in 7 properties for sale are in Florida. Yeah, and that's with the impending no property tax. That's how badly people want to get the fuck out of Florida. Even with no property tax, they're still selling. It's crazy. New Jersey has high property taxes, some of the best schools. Yep. You cover the dog shit housing market in Florida these last few months. I mean, in general, the problem is that like all of the net wealth of the boomers is tied up in their real estate, but they have no one to sell it to, because no one has the money to buy these houses. And even if they did, a lot of these houses are in undesirable places. You have boomers sitting in like 2,000 square foot houses in the middle of nowhere. There are no jobs nearby. Not every job is remote work. So like a lot of these places, just no one's going to fucking buy these properties. The dying towns across the Rust Belt, basically all of small town America, and a lot of these places, no one's going to buy these houses. These old people are like waiting for a big payout they're going to sell. No one's going to buy it. All of these properties are going to end up getting taken over by the damn bank. You're going to have like a mass acquisition, you know? Fucking JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo are going to own collectively like 1/3 of the country because all these boomers are going to die. Their properties are going to go to no one. The properties are going to get inherited by their children. Their children are going to be like, what the fuck do I do with this? You know? Fuck you. And then they're going to sell it for like $5 to Wells Fargo. And then Wells Fargo is going to own more land than the Queen. And Democrats won't do anything about this? Well, actually, Elizabeth Warren's provision in the housing bill that Trump is stubbornly refusing to sign because he wants to pass the SAVE Act does include a provision about private equity not being allowed to own too many houses. But it wouldn't really fix the underlying problem. The underlying problem is too fundamental. You know, there's been discourse on Twitter because China actually managed to pop their housing bubble, at least for now, which is pretty impressive. They brought the value in their housing market way the hell down over the past 4 years. Look at that. It's actually a miracle. Deflate, not pop. Deflate, not pop. Right now, like the real residential property prices in China have been brought all the way down to what they were before the 2008 financial crisis. Didn't they have like huge ghost towns filled with empty apartments? Yeah, you know what happens when you build huge ghost towns and then you produce more people? You fill the ghost towns. People used to give China so much shit for building railways to nowhere, but that's how we did it back in the 1800s. You know what you do? You wait for people to move in. People were like, wow, they just spent $5 billion building a train station out to nowhere. Look at this ghost town. Yeah, then people fucking moved there. and now it serves people's interests, you know? That's how the American railways work. They were just fucking building the railroads out west. Build towns around it, you know? When was the last time we had a new American city? Well, Peter Thiel wants to make one, so. You guys are kind of stupid if you think the Chinese housing crash is a good thing. You want housing price to go down stably. This is an economic disaster. I don't think it's an economic disaster. I'm not saying the Chinese economy is like great or whatever. It's just that like houses are for living in. Houses should not be the source of your wealth. They just shouldn't. Like what this means is that it is more affordable to buy houses. Like young people can buy houses in China. Would you be talking like this during 2008 because that's what's happening? In totally different set of circumstances. 2008 was a crash caused by the over availability of mortgages. This is a deliberate policy to bring down the cost of housing. Emilia Roma, but you shouldn't be investing in the stock market either. This is not a deliberate policy at all in China. What are you talking about? Yes, it is. The Chinese Communist Party has been deliberately trying to bring down housing prices because they're trying not to do what America does, where everyone's net wealth is either tied up in retirement accounts or like their real estate. They very deliberately did this. I thought you were pro-investing. Give me a tier 4 sub. Invest in this channel. Maybe if you invest in it, you'll pay more attention to it. Houses are for living, not for speculation. A Chinese political slogan to curb excessive speculation on the real estate market. The phrase was coined by Xi Jinping, the General Secretary for the Chinese Communist Party, in December 2016 and later became the guiding policy of the Chinese government towards the real estate sector. Pretty good. And you might notice 2016, you have a bump up right here. But it ended up working out, huh? At least for now. Pro-investment Vaush is Vaush's Waluigi. The Waluigi, one might say. U.S. wouldn't do this because too much of our GDPs and housing prices. Well, not our GDP, but like net wealth. What percentage of median Americans' wealth is in real estate? About half of their total net worth for the median or bottom half of American households. Housing serves as the single largest foundation of financial assets for everyday families. It's very bad. Very, very bad. You do not want, like, on average, 1/2 of the average wealth of an American being tied up in an illiquid speculative asset that they also need to live. And that's exactly the issue we're having with all these damn boomers. I decided to treat myself the other day. I got some really nice embossed glass nail files from Germany. I guess they were manufactured in the Czech Republic, but I was tired of using emery boards. Haven't quite gotten used to the feeling of them. Works so much better too. Yeah. A lot of Chinese retirees are getting fucked by this. Yeah, but like, what was the plan there? They were gonna like sell their property or something. It's not good. It's a fundamentally caustic like way of holding wealth. I understand that in China they have a problem with this too, where like a lot of the family's wealth is held up in the value of their property, but thankfully housing's a lot cheaper over there. And housing needs to be kept cheap. It's really, really important. It's actually so important that housing is cheap that it would actually be better for retirees to like live in poverty than it would be to condemn all young people to the total unaffordability of housing. Like it's actually that much of a problem. It's not just about ownership, of course, it's also rent. Like at the very least, economic pressure put on old retirees is like, you know, they're dying anyway. Whereas economic pressure put on younger people is incredibly damaging to like everyone and the future of the country, and also like the propagation of children and so on and so forth. And they have enough of a problem with that because the Chinese don't like breeding, because no one likes breeding anymore. So, obviously, yes, old people should be able to live their retirement in comfort. It's just that the idea that the only way for them to do that is to hold on to an appreciating asset, their house, is not good. Just waiting 35 years for Vaush's perspective change. And this I'm not engaging in like preferentialism here. It is literally like ruining the housing market for everyone, including old people. The system we have in America right now guarantees the old people have no one to sell to. If you have no one to sell to, you might as well not have had like, what is the point of having a property that's appreciated from $30,000 to $2 million if you have no one to sell to? It's literally like destructive to everyone. Treating houses as a speculative asset is like universally ruinous. It's bad for absolutely everyone. It's bad for the people sitting on the properties. They have to pay increasingly high property taxes on a property they're not going to be able to sell because young people won't be able to afford to replace them. It's bad for young people because like rent is insanely high. They'll never be able to afford to buy a house. It's bad for everyone. It's ruinous to everyone. It cannot be done. It has to be stopped. The housing bubble has to be popped. or deflated, whatever you prefer. Canada has the end point of this. No one can afford it who wants to live in it, so it's just investors selling to investors. Yeah. China, it's the whole like Anglosphere has a really fucking bad housing market. Isn't it a better prescription to crack down on the housing market rather than just kicking old people out of their multi-generational homes? Wait, what are you talking? You wouldn't be wait. You're not kicking old people out of multi-generational homes if they're the only ones living there. Then it's by definition a mono-generational home, their generation, for one. For two, kicking people out, all I want is for them to pay property taxes. If they can't afford to pay the property taxes, they should sell the property. Tough. What do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah, we just don't want old people living in massive empty homes they bought in the 70s. I misunderstood, sorry. Give me a tier 4 sub. Give me a tier 4 sub. Thank you for your apology. Now give me a tier 4 sub. No? Fuck. I was hoping that would work. Man, people can't really follow the points. In fairness, I think that a lot of people have like a bad case of capitalist realism brain when it comes to the housing market. They have a really difficult time envisioning things being different. Remember my whole decommodifying housing segment where people were genuinely like aghast at the idea of the government having a say in whether or not you should be able to get a property? Like having money does not mean that an old retired wealthy person should be able to occupy like student housing in the core of a city. You know what I mean? Or you certainly shouldn't be able to like stay in it indefinitely, right? That's kind of fun. Like the people have like different phases in their lives where they need different things. If you're 80 years old, you should not be like sitting smack dab in the middle of an area that relies on like high mobility, high upkeep. You want it to be like hippin' and happening, money exchanging, high velocity, people, you know, living by the skin of their teeth. You don't want like if you allow like everyone to just live anywhere they want based on how much money they have, you end up with like completely irrational outcomes in terms of the allocation of resources, you know? You still believe the government should manage all housing? Yeah, it's utility. They should manage all housing the same way that they should manage utilities like water and electricity and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, maybe we have family who are not wealthy, who had multiple people with grandparents who got screwed over by high property taxes forced to move. You're not getting screwed over by high property taxes when old people are forced to move. You own a high value asset that you're not doing enough with. If you were, you would have the money to pay the property taxes, and you're selling your high value asset probably for hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not getting screwed over. Taxes are not screwing you over. Taxes are how society functions. It's literally like you signing the social contract. You're not getting screwed over. Like sometimes you just have to move into a smaller house. When you're like 40 and you're raising a family and you have a high paying job, yeah, you can be in like the big house. But when you're 80 and you're living on your own, no, you should not be in the same big house. That big house is a finite asset. It's not just yours. It represents like a small part of a broader community. And that community has needs that are localized. The land is finite. Like your individual need to what? Pridefully rot away in that property while all the people you know and love die around you? Like, no, I'm sorry. Sell the property, use that money to go to like a retirement home or a care asset or something, you know? Like a live-in care community where you like own the property or you rent the property, but like the nurse comes by every 2 days or whatever. There are so many old people that are just like living miserable, lonely lives because they can't imagine doing anything else. And then one day they slip in the shower and they die, and no one finds out until 5 days later. It's really sad. I'm not saying that it's all their fault. Like we kind of don't give them a lot of options, but like property taxes are not the problem here, you know? Like I think that a great amount of wealth and effort should be put into building services for the elderly, like massive amounts of it. And I think that when you're old, like you're in a different stage in your life. If you're 80, you probably shouldn't be in like, just to take a neighborhood by example, the West Village. The West Village probably like character-wise should be full of insufferable art students with just like high disposable incomes who are going there and paying like $11 for their matcha or whatever. If you're 80 and you only have the property because you're just like you've been sitting on it and you can barely afford to pay the property taxes with your retirement, like imagine that happening times 1,000. What about times 10,000? Like the neighborhoods die. And this has happened all over America, by the way. Neighborhoods that used to be thriving family neighborhoods are now ghost towns because they're being occupied by the fragmented leftovers of the original inhabitants of those homes. This has happened literally to like thousands of communities. I don't think neighborhoods should be age gated. I don't think we need to apply such strict standards right now. What I think we need is to reassert the value of property taxes, because that is a market aligned way of both providing for municipal services and also putting pressure on people to make the most of the finite, valuable property that they occupy. You don't want to live near us olds, lol. No, I just think that, like, old people are in a different stage in their life. I don't even think they should live, like, far. I'm not saying they should live far away where no one can see them or whatever, but, like, don't you think that different neighborhoods kind of accommodate different stages in your life? We all agree on this with, like, raising children. Like, living in, like, a small apartment housing on Capitol Hill in Seattle is great if you're a student, but you probably don't want to do that as a family of four. That's not really like a good family of four environment, right? And likewise, if you are 80, you probably don't want to be sitting in a 2,200 square foot suburban home that has a gigantic lawn that you don't have the energy to mow anymore, and, like, you can't use 2/3 of the rooms of your house, and it's 2 stories, and you need one of those those lift elevators are so sad, where we just, like, leave old people to rot in these giant homes, and the only way for them to get up to their bedrooms is a fucking elevator lift that takes their wheelchair from the first to the second floor. It's so sad. We're like, yeah, let's just spend $20,000 installing a lift. Move to a smaller property. You literally don't need, you need a tiny living room, a tiny bedroom, and a kitchen. You're old. You're not doing fucking Pilates in the living room, okay? You shouldn't be there. That should be for a lively family, a family. The children should be running up and down that staircase. I know it's the home you grew up in. That's tough. You know, pre-modern tribal humans would, like, move from dirt pile to dirt pile. They do use the room, but it's for storing stuff they bought with their excess income. Yeah, and then when they die and it goes to their children, the children don't use any of it. The children are like, wow, grandma collected, like, $40,000 of china that I'm never going to use. Time to, like, put it away in a estate sale where everything gets sold off for, like, $5 or whatever. It's just not a dignified way of living, you know? Boomers hoard in their giant houses. They allow the neighborhoods to waste away. It's not, like, necessarily the fault of the old. I'm not saying, like, old people are individually bad people for wanting to stay in their family homes, but we need to use some kind of, like, policy incentive to keep these neighborhoods from dying. It's better for everyone if this doesn't happen. Sorry, I'm, like, crazy ranting here. But, you know, California did this especially bad. Yeah. They froze the property taxes for older properties in California. So if you bought your house back in the 1970s, you can, like, pay $5 a month in property taxes on a property worth $3 million or whatever. So we subsidize the fuck out of these old houses. Look at this. These are the subsidies. The map shows the property tax subsidies received by Bay Area homes due to Prop 13. The difference between the actual tax and the tax the home would be paying if assessed at market value. These houses, $40,000 a year, not going to a local school, and they're occupied by old people. I guarantee you, these big houses are occupied by, like, one old person each. Vaush, totally right. I'm a civil engineer in Norfolk, Virginia, and my sewer improvement projects have involved wealthy historic neighborhoods where the people bought up these super nice houses back in the 70s for $30,000 and have now either gone to crap or they have the money to add in pools and are spoiled as fuck. Meanwhile, the poor neighborhoods come after them in city council's priorities. Yeah. What's up with the 4 and 10K one? That means these houses were probably bought after, like, the later. So there's less of a difference between the actual tax and the tax they would pay if their property value was being taxed appropriately. The longer ago you bought these houses, the more of a subsidy you get, which means that the older and deader the house, the more of a the more the state, like, pays for you to stay there, which is insane. Young people paying more taxes than old people. So if you're young and an urban professional and you buy this house right here, congratulations. You are now paying quadruple in property taxes as this person who bought it back in 1982. Is it not the same in other areas? No, California's Prop 13 is uniquely bad policy. Oh, you're young and you're trying to build a family? Sorry, bucko, you have to pay an extra $40,000 a year. These are annual taxes. If you're young and you just bought this property, congratulations. You're now paying $40,000 a year more than the people who live in this house for no reason other than you bought it later. Maybe the tax is too much. Dog, look at the neighborhood we're in. Palo Alto? Nah, I think the tax is way the fuck too little. And if you can't afford it, sell. You are not entitled to indefinitely occupy a bustling, high productivity neighborhood. Isn't there any way to unfuck the system without this? No, pay your property taxes. Go down to my fucking... Well, this is just in the Bay Area, so we don't get to look at Los Angeles. Chart on lost local government revenue from Prop 13. Look at this. It's actually insane. Prop 13 was so ruinous for municipal funding, annual property tax revenue in billions, that it cut it in half across all of California. Across all of California, schools suddenly found themselves with half the money. Roads, road repairs, street lights, park maintenance, everything municipal governments do, all of them suddenly had half the property tax to work with. That number didn't reach its previous point, the point that it was at 1978, until all the way in like 2001. A 23-year gap. And all the while, the housing prices only went up too. It was like committing suicide, but we did it to privilege the boomer generation, and it was overwhelmingly boomers. My wife and I live with my 86-year-old grandma in LA in the house she bought in the early 60s because she pays like $1K a month in property taxes, and we'd be paying like $3K a month to rent a small apartment. It's so fucked up. It's crazy, really. Well, anyway. Hope Chatter realizes one of the reasons rent is so high is because of Prop 13. Well, yeah, of course. Like, decreasing property taxes for basically everyone, especially for legacy construction and ownership, means you increase housing prices. Because you create a system where these properties are not taxed at their appropriate value, which means that people who can't afford to stay in a neighborhood get to continue staying in that neighborhood. It's an overall inflationary effect on prices. Does subsidizing these property taxes potentially help prevent the overinflation in the housing market there? No, it does the opposite. You're essentially paying boomers the cost they would otherwise have to pay for the actual value of these properties. It has the exact opposite effect. Now you have people paying $5 a year on property taxes who think they get to sell a $3 million property to young people when they finally decide to sell and retire. Do Americans pay much higher property tax in general? We tend to, relative to other countries, because A, we have high property values, and B, because that's the main way municipal governments get their money. It's just the way we've structured things. So how'd this happen to begin with? Because all municipal policy in America is designed to benefit legacy homeowners. Vaush foments hatred towards older generations as rage bait to drive interactions. Your enemy is private equity, the GOP, and the never-ending pensions for municipal workers that drain tax coffers. Pension for municipal workers. As a Gen X who worked his ass off and is on the cusp of retirement, I am not your enemy. I am coming for your retirement. I am going to run for office and I'm going to liquidate your retirement. I'm going to dissolve your retirement accounts and use them to fund. I'm not even going to lower the cost of housing. It's just going straight into a grant to all young home buyers. You're going to live in the street, dog. Putting your ass in the device. You could buy a really nice shirt with their retirement. That's fucking true. That's true.